Today, we are learning about possibilities for private, not publicly funded case management services. It's something that many of us have been desperate to know more about this resource for years, so we're quite excited. Our guest expert is licensed marriage and family therapist Lesa Pascali. Lesa will describe her services, her style of working, and give us an idea of what benefits we might expect if we could arrange to have a private case manager. To say that Lesa Pascali brings a unique combination of experiences and education to the fields of private therapy and case management would be a massive understatement. Lesa was born and raised in San Jose and has been practicing therapy and case management for 19 years in the Bay Area. She uses Zoom for her sessions, but does occasional home visits as well in various locations. She periodically visits the Bay Area for face-to-face meetings and has associates in the Bay Area that can provide case management support as needed. Lesa works successfully with a broad range of clients because of her diverse background. After receiving a BA in sociology and criminology from San Jose State University, she worked as a deputy sheriff for the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office for 16 years. She also spent 7 years working as a criminal investigator for the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office. As an investigator, she primarily worked in criminal fraud and eventually headed the adoptions unit, where she successfully located missing children estranged from their families. In addition to her law enforcement work, Lesa also earned a master's degree in psychology, counseling, and education from Santa Clara University. After she passed the exams and completed 3,500 hours of community service to receive her LMFT certification, her work focused on therapy and support systems for mental health challenges, for sex offenders, for families with a high potential for violence, for police officers, and for veterans. Lesa also helps couples transform their relationships, even when other therapies haven't worked. Well, they say there's no substitute for experience, Lesa. So we're very anxious to hear what you have to share with us about private case management today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That was such a nice introduction. I don't really have to talk about myself, I guess. But I am here because I've been asked a lot about case management. And I believe I have an advantage because of my law enforcement experience. It's allowed me to kind of understand in depth the criminal system, how people that have a mental illness can get involved in it very easily, and how to kind of maneuver that system. So I'm going to see if I can bring up my, let's see, my presentation. Okay, and okay, and I'm going to share this. Let me move this over here. So I started a business back in 2004 when I first started doing therapy, and it's called Life Skills Planning, because I felt, a lot of people out there don't know how to plan their lives, especially if they suffer from some kind of a mental illness. And so I felt, that's a pretty good title. I'm going to use this. So I do private therapy and I do case management. I do both. We talked about my education already, and in Santa Clara Sheriff's Office, where I did work for 16 years. I was in the jail, learned a lot about mental illness there, and I had no idea what it was like until I went into that place and kind of saw what was going on. I worked the court system, the LPS calendar, where a lot of people that are mentally ill and on conservatorships wind up. I worked in the classrooms. I was a DARE officer. I did a little bit of undercover, and I did a lot of public speaking for Sheriff Gillingham. Okay, let's just continue to go. I told you a little bit about life skills planning, how I started working public speaking, criminal, we talked about that, and then private counseling with law enforcement, veterans, and later with people that had mental health challenges. And I really felt that I had an advantage because when I first got into the women's jail, I had no idea what a revolving door it was like for those females. It was incredible. And I had no idea how they could come in as healthy 18-year-olds. And by the time they got to be in their 30s, come in as someone that didn't even recognize me anymore, that I hardly recognized, and that had eventually become homeless.
Mm.
So, and that just broke my heart. I mean, you get a little tough in there, but it still is very difficult to see that when you've seen these women through the years. So I want to talk just for a bit about therapy, and then we're going to talk about private case management. So when I do therapy and I do it with people that are suffering from schizophrenia, I don't like to be in the office. I either do it on Zoom, and sometimes it really, really works, or I'll go pick them up and say, you know what, let's just go have a cup of coffee. Let's just go talk. Because some people cannot be in an office every single week, and you're going to try to have a conversation with them and their mind is maybe somewhere else. So I try to see my clients as often as I can. I do the telehealth therapy, which, by the grace of God, we got going with COVID, and which is very popular now with doctors and myself and different people. So I think that was probably the only good thing that came out of COVID, is that we were able to do telehealth. And that was very helpful for a lot of therapists and a lot of doctors and patients. I do different types of therapy, and I include this in my case management. So normally with a person that suffers from a severe mental illness, you're going to do cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're changing their thoughts so you can change the behavior. There's also what's now being used is compassion focused therapy, and I'm getting to know a lot more about that. And I really, really like that, because I've always said, I don't have a lot of patience, but for some ungodly reason, I have the most patience with my clients who I know are suffering from a disablement, such as schizophrenia. And I also do DBT. I like DBT. We talk a lot about changing how you think and feeling the opposite of how you're feeling today, and doing meditation and doing all kinds of things, and hypnosis. So I like doing that. The benefits of doing Zoom therapy is that sometimes you can't get a person to hop on a bus and come down to your office. Sometimes they're very, very afraid. There's psychological barriers. They have agoraphobia. They don't want to be out of their house. There's a reduction of stigma. They're ashamed of themselves. They've gone through psychosis. They've made, just horrible mistakes, and it's not their fault. It's the illness, I always tell them. And sometimes these people, as we know, are very isolated, and they could be living with their parents or their families, but they stay in their room and they don't like to go out. So I feel, you know what, if they could meet with me once a week, maybe, FaceTime me or call me or be it whatever, at least I'm breaking up that isolation with them. When I do private case management, I know this is what you're very much into. I look at the person and I'll do an assessment and figure out, okay, what's the primary goal here? Do we want to take this person and put him in classes? And how are we going to go about planning this? Who's the person's support team? And then I'm going to do the coordination and the monitoring of how this is all going to be assembled and where this is going to go. And I'm going to give you an example of somebody that we did this with in just a second. So private case management, you're going to develop your team. I like to do weekly check-ins. I always say that if you can get a person to learn, it helps their self-esteem, it helps their brain, it makes them feel good about themselves. When I had a client that couldn't get into Gavel in college because it was very obvious that the teacher did not want to teach him computer skills, I told that person when he got back in the car, I said, you know what? You and I love to sing. We're always singing Burt Bacharach songs. Let's go get you some singing lessons. I do on Zoom, we do a lot of rock painting, mandala rock painting, which is really kind of a meditating type of art. So a lot of times I'll do family meetings. I met with one family where the brother was very obsessed with the half brother's daughter. And it was really a very messy situation. And we had a family of 5 and we met And we really worked a lot of different things out with the family, and we did it all on Zoom. And then one day when I came to California, I said, I want to meet all of you in person. And we met at one of the clients' homes, at one of the parents' homes. And it was a wonderful meeting. And I like to do that because I like to know who I'm talking to. I can't do it all the time, but I try to do it as much as I can. Sometimes it's a matter of finding housing. This particular person was in a hotel near the family, and it was a big problem. And I said, let's try to find something in San Jose that's away from everybody. And it was very, very difficult. There was a lot of problems, but somehow it all worked out, and it keeps working out with him getting on medication and putting himself in 3 classes, but now he's down to 1. And the last I heard, his mom had written me saying he's just doing really, really well. So sometimes it goes downhill and then it goes up. You can never tell. You just keep on trying. And it's a slow, I'm sure, as you know, very slow process. I do a lot of coaching, a lot of encouragement. Sometimes when I can't reach a person, I have a 24-year-old that probably has the attitude of a 16-year-old. And I know doggone well the way I can get through to my little girl is to tell her how much I love her makeup and ask her, how do you put on those false eyelashes? Every time I try to do mine, I've got glue all over the place. And she loves that, and she tunes into me. And when I go to Aptos, I'll go pick her up if she's not in psychosis, and we'll go to Pete's and just have a cup of coffee. But I kind of know, what kind of turns her on and what doesn't. Every client is different. My 24-year-old is so different than my engineer who gets so affected, but is able to hold down a full-time job. So some people can do the weekly Zoom therapy. Some people can't do Zoom therapy. They can do maybe FaceTime, or maybe they can only do a weekly phone call. And I have somebody that another therapist asked me to take with them, to do therapy with them, and we're going to do it just by phone. She's very OCD, doesn't understand Zoom, and so we're just going to do it by phone. Sometimes, like I said, family therapy with 5 or 6 on Zoom works very well, sometimes in the homes. I do consulting for criminal cases. If your child's in trouble and you don't know what's going to happen next, we can kind of go through, well, have you called a public defender? Has he been assigned one? Has he gone to the arraignment? I know a lot about the court process because I was working the courts for a lot of years, and so I can see what's going on. Sometimes it's maybe finding a homeless client, looking out for them, or getting a place where they can go. And it's so interesting, your group, because I tuned into YouTube and I saw Ian speak about the Mateo house, and I was so thrilled that I called last week, didn't get an answer, called on Saturday, somebody answered, and I said, I'm just about to give somebody an ultimatum, and I want to know if he doesn't choose to go to rehab, will you take him into Mateo house and let me explain his situation? So I'm waiting for Ian to call me back. So that was what a marvelous man, and what a marvelous program he has going. Sometimes it's medication management. Maybe I need to talk to the doctor, for instance, with this person, and say, the Haldol's not working. The Seroquel seems to be working. There's some side effects. Is there anything else we can do here? So I try to, be well-versed in all these things, but I've always said, you as the parents or you as the relative will know so much more than I will ever know, because you're the one that's dealing with this problem, not me. And I just try to, read as much as I can and listen and learn as much as I can. In 19 years, I think I've learned a lot, but there's still much more to learn. And I don't know if you can see this or not. Okay. So who will care for your loved one when you can't do that job anymore? Who's going to do it for you? So I put together kind of a little bit of a list. And support. I know you probably already know this, that if something were to happen to you, what family, relative, friend can step in and say, you know what, this is somebody that I can trust. Maybe he's going to handle the money part of it. Maybe he or she's going to be just a friend and check on them weekly. And maybe you're going to leave a stipend for them so that they, have a little bit of money to work with and could take that person out. I'm sure you know about conservatorships. Conservatorships in Santa Clara County are difficult to get. And there has to be a real need for that person. For instance, they have to be a danger to themselves or to others, where they can't survive on the street. Legal documents. Do you have a special needs trust? Maybe it's just a letter of intent, which is not a legal document, but you're going to write a letter and tell people, this is what I want to do with my child. This is what I want to have happen. Maybe you're talking about housing. Where is this person going to go? Because you're going to be selling your house, or the house will be sold upon your death, and this person has nowhere to go. Are you going to set up housing? Lots of residential homes out there. Some are very nice, and some I just wouldn't put my child near one of those. And then the location of documents, so others are aware. If you go into some people's homes, and I've asked them, where's your living trust? Well, that's over here. Okay, well, in that desk, yes. Okay, but where's this? I'm not really sure. Maybe up in the closet. And my suggestion is maybe get a personal records organizer. You can get one on Amazon. I was looking it up this weekend. And let others know this to somebody that you trust. This is my safe numbers. This is the combination of my safe. This is where my personal organizer is. This is where my living trust is. So, we all collect. And as we get older, we collect even more. And I would just urge you to make sure that you have all of your documentation in order. So if something were to happen suddenly to you, somebody could come in and say, look, here's all the directives of what they want to happen. Okay, it's just about being organized and having it all in one place, and making sure that you either talk to your attorney or to somebody that handles these things, so that you can be all squared away and not have to worry about it. A couple of success stories. I think one of my best stories is I was called about a girl that was mother of two, a wife, husband and her were getting a divorce, but they had both smoked so much weed they had bought off the street. And this is a person that's incredibly bright and had a great job and has a master's degree, but smoked so much weed that she went into psychosis. And her attorneys asked me, can you do a guardianship from way back east? I said, sure, I can do that. So we did it, got her to trust me, told her I worked with a special team. She liked that because even though she was in psychosis, she trusted the law enforcement part of me. Got her to see a psychiatrist under the guise of, this is somebody that's on my team. He's like a bodyguard. He can help you with this, because she would not go unless I told her things like that. She went, was able to get on medication, has come down out of the psychosis, and is just doing so well. So that's one of my big success stories. There's other ones. But, not every story is a success story. And so you just hope for the best. I keep my lines open in case somebody wants to call me, especially if it's one of my clients. And just keep working with them and hope for the best. Before you ask me any questions, or because I know we're going to get a lot of questions, I want to ask you something, because you as the parents are working so hard at this, and it's a never-ending job. It's your whole life usually, because this starts at an early age. Sometimes it can start later. But my question is, how are you taking care of yourself? Are you getting the rest that you need so you can handle this situation? Are you getting out on walks to get fresh air? Are you eating properly? A lot of people don't realize, but 70% of what you eat and the exercise you get is what gives you brain power and is what makes you healthy. And people think, oh yeah, the gut and that kind of thing. But I'm telling you that really they've done work and a lot of statistics showing us that really is the case. It's about what you eat and the exercise you get and the rest you get and the adequate sleep and being not under stress, but maybe trying to do meditation. So that's my question that each of you can ask yourselves is, how am I taking care of myself? And I'm going to open up the rest to you. Okay.
Thank you, Lesa. There are
Sure.
a couple of questions in chat. And there are three what ifs. What if the client you're working with has no insight into their illness and becomes uncooperative or says, I don't need you?
So I have a couple like that right now, where even one's on medication, but he's just not doing well. And I have another one that's on a lot of medication and she's not doing well and she's in denial. And all you can do is, for me, call the doctor, write a letter to the doctor, write an email and say, okay, this isn't working. What else can we do? And I try to get into their world. So for instance, when I talk to a certain person and I know that eye makeup is a real big deal for her, we'll talk about that. And then I'll say, well, let's talk about DBT. Remember we talked about DBT and you learned that and that kind of a thing. So I just try to get into their world, and every day is a new day. I've learned there's no set formula. And when they're in denial, it's very, very difficult, very, very difficult. But the big thing is for you not to be codependent. And that's very difficult when you have that person living with you in the house and you just are like, I don't know what to do. So
I think many of us are thinking about when we're not here also. And so if you have someone who perhaps gets so paranoid that they're hostile to you and won't see you, what do you do? And what could parents think you are doing in their
I
state?
think that the mobile health crisis team is a good answer for a lot of people that are afraid of their child. That calling 911 and explain to them, my child's in psychosis. I'm a little bit afraid right now. You need to have the mobile crisis team accompany you to my house so that this person doesn't just wind up in jail, so that they get the help they need and they get the proper people over there that know how to talk to somebody that's in a psychosis, that's in crisis. Does that make
Well,
sense?
I was thinking more about how you would handle it if a person, let's say the parents are gone and they have set it up with you that you would be a private case manager, and the person is so paranoid they say, I don't want to talk to any people, do not come near me, I'm going to stay locked up in my apartment or wherever they are. What do you have ways to get through that at all?
So what I do is I've done a lot of this on Zoom. Even if I'm not around and I can't go to their house, I've called, like say San Francisco PD, and I've got a girl that's threatening to kill herself. I need you to go over there right away. And I'm the therapist and the caseworker that's working with her, and I'm going to stay on the line. And that's all you can do. Is if the parents aren't home, you need help right away. You get the police out there with the crisis mobile team so they know how to talk to them. And then you can always give me a call. What do? I'm stuck.
What if the person that you're case managing has no support, no family that wants to be involved, no friends, no church, nothing? You
How
talked about,
would they be in
form a
contact
team.
with me? Yeah, how would they be in contact with me then if they didn't have a family to reach
Well, I'm
out?
imagining that it would be parents have set up your services before
Okay,
they're gone,
yeah.
but there's no other family member or friend or other support group. One of your things in your plan was form a support team. Who are the other people involved? What if
So
there are no other people?
well, there should be. If the person is with me, they should have a psychiatrist, a therapist, a regular doctor, a regular physician. And as a team, we would get together and say, okay, I have this person, and I just did it this morning, like I said, that's not doing well. She's in psychosis. The medication isn't working. What can we do? And then for me, I would go out there and make a home visit and see if I could get that person to talk to me.
So it's not uncommon to have a person with serious mental illness who has no treatment, refuses medication, does not have a psychiatrist, is not signed up with any services at all. And sometimes we hope that a private case manager can get in relationship somehow And I wonder if you've encountered that situation or been able to help people get into treatment.
Well, for me, it's really, and I think it's very, very tough for anybody. When a person gets off their medication, that's the tough part. And even when they get back on it, doesn't mean that they're always going to come right out of psychosis. That's a very tough thing. And so every person is different. And for me, I would try to get through to them. And if I couldn't get through to them, then I would call the psychiatrist and say, okay, we have this problem. I'd probably call 911 if I thought that person was in danger and say, look, I think he's a danger to himself. What can we do here? So I probably need more specifics, Melinda.
Mm-hmm.
Can
I
you
know
give me an
that
example?
well, here's one in the chat. What about someone who has never been willing to stay on meds and will need ongoing support for many years when I'm gone, a parent has said.
Mm-hmm.
There are
So,
people who, like my son, for example, is in his 50s now.
mm-hmm.
He refuses medication. He refuses all services. He refuses
Right.
all visits from anybody, including me most of the time now. Do you have ways to get through to those people?
Have you thought about a conservatorship?
Well, I'm not going to use my son as an example, but I do know that others have been recently taken off conservatorship once they get a housing voucher.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though they need that kind of protection, it's thought that if they have food, shelter, and clothing, they can't be on conservative. They don't meet the criteria for conservatorship anymore.
Hmm.
And so there's nobody. There's a young sociologist at New York University, Alex Barnard, who's studying this, has written a book about abandonment to autonomy. A lot of this is happening with housing vouchers that are now becoming available to people with serious mental illness with no requirement to be in treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, where they may have been confined in a locked facility, they get a housing voucher and then they're released, and then they don't meet the terms for conservatorship anymore. So they
Right.
have nothing, no protection, no treatment, no connection with services at all.
Mm-hmm.
And how could a private case manager
I don't
get
know if a private
for-
case manager could even help then. I mean, to be perfectly honest, if he's not going to talk to his relative or to his friends or to anybody, and that mom or that dad as a private case manager, that person's going to do the best they can with that person, but he or she may not be able to get through to them. I'm going to certainly try, but I can't work miracles. I'm going to do the best that I can, get the psychiatrist involved and the doctor, but every case is different. And so we just have to just work with what we have.
I'm thinking of a really fantastic nonprofit that I've worked with in the juvenile justice arena, which you may even know about, Fresh Lifelines for Youth, FLY.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They have the secret sauce for engaging kids that are terrified of anybody who comes from that looks like law enforcement, and they think of themselves as others in society. And so when they have someone from FLY coming to reach out to them to try to engage them, they usually flee or try to stay away and don't respond. But what the FLY people do is they just keep going back again and again and again and again. And pretty soon the kids go, she's so annoying. I guess I better answer the door.
Yeah.
And then they find out that there's a caring person there, and they tell this story over and over again. What might be the limits? Let's say you or another private case manager decided to take that tack, but there were no other people, no parents, the parents are dead. How much could you keep up doing that?
If that person's my responsibility, then they're my responsibility. If they've hired me to take care of that person, then it would be the same thing. You just keep trying to work with them, and you call them and you check on them and say, okay, are you allowing visitors today? Nope. Okay, then we'll come back next week. And that's all you can do is just try to get through to them. And I've been very successful with a lot of people. that would not take medication and would not, talk to their parents, but there's somehow if you can get into their world, be it about music, be it about makeup, be it about, somebody they're interested in, that has always seemed for me to be the answer, but it doesn't always work. I mean, you just do the best you can with these people.
Right. I was wondering whether money might be a motivator. Some of us have set up a special needs trust that will be
Right.
administered by Proxy Parent. You probably
Mhm.
know about that organization, Proxy Parent
Okay.
and
Mhm.
Plan of California. And they typically set up a case manager type of person who checks in with the people to distribute funds or answer their requests for funds from the trust.
Mhm.
And sometimes the client wants to engage with them because there's money involved. Can you do that kind of thing? Or
I've always
you
said, and
interact
yeah.
with the transfer of money?
Yes. So I've always said that money is such a leverage for people that are on the street and they need to eat and they need housing. And they always seem to want to go back to their parents and say, I need some money. And I tell the parents, see if you can say, I'm going to give you some money when I want you to call this person. I want you to get housing first. And then I'm going to give you some money. That's such a leverage. Money has always been a big thing to a lot of people that are, sick and they need help. But
Mhm.
if the parents are just giving money, giving money, giving money, there's no reason for that person to change. You have to disrupt things. And when you disrupt the scenario, it doesn't mean that everything's going to turn out right. It's a big risk.
So speaking of money, how do you charge for your services?
I charge by the hour. I charge
Mhm,
$90
mhm.
for case management. Therapy is a different price, and we can talk about that because I know that parents put out a lot of money for kids like this. So that's something that we can talk about if you're interested in therapy.
And imagining the scenario where the parents are gone, how do they how can you predict how many hours and how would they put aside enough money for you or
Well,
any case
yeah,
manager?
that's something that the parent and I would have to talk about and really do an assessment on what's this person going to need in the future? How often is he going to need me or his psychiatrist? What kind of insurance does he have? Every case is so different and every case is detailed. And that's where attorneys have to come in and sometimes do a special needs trust. So it's kind of a general question, but every case is different. And that would be something I would sit down with the parents and say, okay, what exactly do you need? How much do you want to spend on this person? What's going to cover his costs
Mhm.
and things like that?
So many of us want to do advanced planning. And I think, as you mentioned, it's really nice to have the relationship with the person who would be the case manager when the parents are gone. Have it
Mhm.
start. Barbara brought this up before the need is so great.
Mhm.
And so it won't be such a difficult transition. Would you offer something like a consultation with any of the parents who are thinking, gosh, we just don't quite know what to do and what's
Yeah.
possible?
So I just talked to a couple of parents this week, and I'm not charging them because they haven't decided to hire me yet, but I want to at least give them some advice. This is where you can turn, this is what you can do, because I know that so many parents are lost. They just don't know what to do. So a lot of times I'll say, like for therapy, I'll do a 15-minute free consultation, but it turns into an hour. So it just depends, how much they need. But usually after the first consult, then I'll say, okay, if you're going to hire me, then this is what I'm going to do, and this is what's going to happen. And again, it's a case by case, and it's a day by day thing of whoever I'm working with.
Mhm. So I'm wondering about this work as a profession and
Mm-hmm.
if it could grow as a profession. Um, some of us were talking before the meeting started. Could we have a referral list? Um, could we build up this work as a legitimate profession and support the people who do it? Where would you say would be the places to look for people who could be a good case manager and might be interested in this work? Would it only be
Yeah,
therapists or?
I don't think therapists, there's a lot of therapists that do case management.
Yeah.
And the reason I got into it is because I was interested in working with people with severe mental illness. And the person that was the conservatorship for people like this said, I'll hire you and you can get out of your office and work with these people on the street if that's what you want to do.
Oh.
And so that's how I started 19 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But those were people that were conserved. And then I kind of branched out on my own and just said, well, you know what? I can do this. This is, easy, for me, because I know what I'm doing. And I've been in so many homes because of law enforcement that I'm not afraid to go in a person's home.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that won't do it, that are afraid. They do get kind of nervous going into people's homes, they're just not sure. What I always tell parents is this: get into a support group just like this one and find out from other parents, who are you using? And that's how I got involved with NAMI years ago when I started going to the classes. And I remember talking to one woman because she shared a story about her son. And I just went up to her and I said, I'm a therapist. I would love to work with your son. And let me tell you what I do. And I really wanted to do it. And so then she kind of broke off and told other people. And then my name just kind of got shared. And that's how I met Barbara and a couple of other people. So
well, I think the key is, as you have said, people who really want to do this work. And Ian said the same thing. You have to really want to work with people who have serious mental illness. You have to want that.
This is what the therapist told me, that because she does conservatorships and now she doesn't even really do therapy. She gave up her therapy license because she loves what she's doing. She's told me she's in her 80s now. And she told me years ago, Lesa, you've got it. You've got the gift. You can do this. And I go, well, you know what? I love people like that. What I just could never understand how these women in jail could show up, and it just breaks my heart. One just would come in and out, and she had pretty much lost her brain. Part of her nose had been bitten off. And I used to see her out in patrol, and I'd say, hey, come here. And I'd give her some money, and she probably went out and bought alcohol. But someone told me, do you know her story? I said, no, I just know that she comes in. And the person brought her yearbook. It was a deputy. And she had been the campus queen.
Oh my God.
Campus.
Wow.
And it just broke my heart. I said, that person, and her hair was brown, but it was blonde. And she was wearing when they used to wear the feathers back in the 60s, when they used to wear kind of like that real soft. It just floored me. But you hear those stories, and maybe someone that you've gone to high school with where they started off just so great and they were popular, and then mental illness set in. And they didn't know what was going on. So they started drinking or doing drugs. Then they wound up in jail. And it's just, those kind of cases, I just thought, oh my gosh, by the grace of God, that's not me. And that's why I like doing the work that I do, because I think I'm good at it. And because I have a big heart and I love people like that. I don't like when they get angry with me and call me names, but I'm kind of, that's happened. But, it's just part of that illness. It's not them. It's their mental illness. They can't help it. It's the illness that's doing it.
So we need to clone you, and we need to many more people who are driven by love, as you are and as Ian is, and see these people for people who they are. That's why I was asking the question, where can we find more of them? I think there's one more question in the show. What about the situation of someone with SMI, mobile crisis comes out, and 5150s that person? The hospital releases that person after 24 hours. Then the whole cycle repeats itself many times. Is this an endless cycle where the professionals just want to get rid of the patient? What would you do in this situation?
Remember when Judge Stephen Manley started the mental health court? Yes. I was there back in the 80s. I was a bailiff, and I was looking at his court thinking, what is this about? And I didn't understand. It's people like him that have caused changes, but there's only a few changes, right? I mean, it's something we just have to keep working at. I think that part of why people get turned away is because they don't have enough beds. I know when I was working in the jail, we had pregnant women sleeping on the floor till one of the inmates got smart enough to sue the county. That never happened anymore because they went to court and the sheriff lost.
Carolyn, I saw that you had a question.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a son that it was actually a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, so he doesn't
Mhm.
have psychosis in that thing, but he does not um handle money, I mean, he's very happy to spend and will
Yeah,
spend, but to manage and I don't have anybody else, but
yeah.
myself. And so I just am thinking about the roles of fiduciary and a case manager who helps them with just, some of these. Would the case manager help, for example, to find somebody that might help him clean his house or to help him do shopping or that
The
kind of
case manager would do that,
case
okay?
manager?
And we can hire people to go over there once a week and say, okay, they're here. Your son has to be able to allow them in though, right? And sometimes that can be a problem. But if everything goes well, yeah, we have people that go over there and do that. But as far as the fiduciary part of it is you can hire a financial fiduciary, you can hire somebody like me. It just depends who you feel the most comfortable with and who you have talked to and feel good about and have really designated, this is what's supposed to go here, this is what's supposed to go there. There's professional conservators. I'm not a professional conservator. And those are the people that really manage the money and are doing it. And that's that's what they do for a living.
Would the fiduciary just pay once a month the rent, once a month? I mean, would they basically pay the bills come in?
Whatever the bills are and whatever you've allotted to that person to pay for, that's what they would do. But what I've seen is they get a certain amount. And if that person runs up different charges, then they pay for it. But they tell them, you can't do more than this much. This is all you're going to get this month.
Yeah.
So if you dip into your spending money because you left the electricity on or whatever too much, that's going to be taken out of your spending money.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
That's your leverage with your son, though, I would say, right? Is the money part of this.
Yeah.
That's how you can try to get him to do what you want him to do, though, because you can say, if you don't do this, and you just have to be prepared because they usually don't like that.
Yes, I know.
Would there be a situation where the case manager would have access to a cash account, a savings account, or a checking account that has
If it's under the, yeah, if it's
money in
under,
it,
yeah, if it's under the person's name and my name, two different names,
a joint
yes,
account?
like a joint account.
Yeah.
But that he or she cannot go into that joint account unless I sign for it and is not allowed to get money out.
I was going to say something too. I think one of the things I think we've set up is that you assign somebody, but then they can research and find the right person. So if I were to like assign you, let's say, Lesa, for my son, if you weren't able to do it, then you could find somebody who would do it. Because it's hard to set it up now, but if I leave 20 years from now or 15 years from now, the businesses could be different.
Right.
So, or if you're retired or something like that. So I think you can set it up that way so that people can, it's a little more fluid in that way. It's not so set in stone. So that if, you can assign
if something were to happen right to the case manager, then what? So there has to be a series of names, like if something happens to this person, then this money will go to this person. It has to be set up like that.
Yeah.
And that would be where attorneys would come in and set that all up for you. Is that who did that for you?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I have, but I realized just in this conversation that there's kind of a gap. Like how do things meet up? And I'm interested in contacting you to hire you just in the event that something does happen to me, and then you could talk to because he has a private case manager.
Right.
But maybe I could ask him to do that. I don't know, but it sounds like you've got a kind of a business financial part of it that,
Why don't you give me a call and we can go into depth about what you're looking for? And maybe if it's not me, I can refer you to somebody.
Mm.
Okay?
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your first name?
I'm Amy
Amy.
Okay.
Lundblad.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Amy.
So
Okay.
separate from the case management needs, we have located a private fiduciary for the rest of our financial management.
Mhm.
And I asked him this question, what happens if you die? And he said, well, that is why I'm so active in the professional association.
Yeah.
And here, and I'll even tell you the people that I have gotten to know whom I trust in the profession. But in the end, you have to rely on me, that you trust me to find another person.
Yeah.
There's a word for it, the subsequent trustee or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a scenario where we also might say to him, in case you have, well, I guess he's not, that he's separate from the special needs trust. The thing that I'm thinking about with proxy parent is they don't have any, they have the system where they find somebody who wants to work with mentally ill people, who will be the contact with the client and be in charge of distributing the money.
Mhm.
But they don't have enough people. They don't have
Yeah.
anybody in Northern California. And so that makes me feel really nervous about setting up the special needs trust with them.
Are you talking about the fiduciaries association, that your fiduciary belongs to that? To
Oh,
the fiduciary?
there were two things. They were separate
Okay.
from the special needs trust.
Okay.
The special needs trust is set up with Plan of California, also called Proxy Parent.
Right.
You familiar with it?
Not too familiar, but go ahead.
It's a pooled special needs trust that was set up maybe 20 years ago by some lawyers who had adult children with schizophrenia.
Okay.
And you can fund it while you're alive. In my case, it's going to be funded with life insurance. So it's
Mhm.
not funded now, but it's all set up to be funded.
Right.
That's a separate thing from the rest of the estate that my husband and I would have.
Mhm.
And for that, we have this professional fiduciary because we didn't want family members to have to manage it.
Right.
And so he's really terrific. I mean, talk about a find.
Who
And
is it?
he's not, his name is, you're going to laugh. His name is Pablo O'Brien.
Oh, okay. I've never heard of him. I would
And
remember
he
that name.
belongs to the Professional Fiduciaries of California. I think it's PFAC or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
This is where I
PFAC.
found him. You can go
Yeah.
online and you can see the profiles of all these different people who handle regular trusts.
And who have taken the test to be a professional
Yes.
fiduciary, which I
Yeah.
have not taken that test. So
Yeah, that's a whole
right.
profession in
That's a
itself.
whole profession, right?
What he did was he apprenticed himself. He had a career in the tech world, and I looked him up on LinkedIn and saw that he had amazing recommendations from the people who worked for him, and
Mhm.
sounded great. And then he tired of that, and he said, I've been managing these kinds of things for my family for a long time. He comes from a big family, and I kind of like it, and I think that I could do it professionally. So he apprenticed himself to a fiduciary
Mhm.
and learned the nitty gritty. And then he took the training, which is offered at only two colleges. One of them is
Mhm.
UC Riverside, and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then set up
Yes.
for himself. And
There's one up here in Washington. It's a whole program that you have to take, right?
yeah, and he got involved in the professional association for learning, but also
Mhm.
for these relationships
Mhm.
where they can help each other. And he's not unfamiliar with mental illness. He's not afraid of our story, but he's not going to be the person who's really going to be able to tolerate the kind of resistance and so forth that most of us have with our kids.
Right. Right.
And so I'm thinking there's a situation where someone like you could be a resource to him if he
Mhm.
has an occasion to have to interact
Yes.
with the person with mental illness. Then you would be collaborators in some
So
way.
that's what I do for, do you know who Irene Keenan is?
No.
So Irene Keenan is a professional fiduciary, and she's been working with people with mental health. She's the one that mentored me. And
Uh-huh.
so she does conservatorship. She was a therapist, but she's no longer a therapist. And that's exactly what she does. And if she needs me, let's say when I come to California to go check, she's got a lot of people under her, but if she needs me to go check on somebody, then she'll have me go out. But
Mhm.
that's exactly what she does. And she's very trustworthy. She's very, very good.
Mhm. So yet again, I'm thinking about if we could gather all these resources together to,
Yeah.
hard to
So-
find these
So
people.
I know.
Irene Keenan, so what is her title? She's a fiduciary?
She's a professional fiduciary
Professional, okay.
that was a psychologist. Well, she's still a psychologist, but she used to just do therapy, and that's how I met her. And then she's the one that got me into her business and said, "Do you like to work with people like this?" I said, "Oh my gosh, yes." I really felt like when she asked me, I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm so lucky like this." I really, and she's mentored me ever since. Yeah, she's awesome. She really is awesome. She's very bright. Yeah, she's neat. Anybody else have
thoughts?
any questions?
Other thoughts that are coming up? Oh, I have one thought. How do you figure out what's your maximum caseload? It must be so inconsistent.
Some days are so hectic. Like this morning, I couldn't even talk to my sister, and there was an emergency in our family. I said, "I can't even talk right now. I got to call you back." And then other days are just kind of peaceful, and you're just kind of like, "Oh, wow, what's going on? Where's everybody at?" But it's just up and down. And because I only do this part-time, I used to see 10 people a day. And I loved it. I was really happy. But someone told me, "You keep doing that, and you won't be doing that for very many years because you're going to burn yourself out."
Yeah.
So now I see, like in therapy, maybe 3 to 4 per day. Case management, it just depends. Sometimes I get 3 and 4 calls a week, and sometimes they're from somebody that's in psychosis. And then other times it's peaceful. It just depends. It just depends.
Like life,
But yeah, but
like
again,
all
you
of
have
our
to,
lives.
yeah, but you have to really love this work. Yeah. And it's always a learning experience. It always is.
Well, I just wish that we could have a way to cast out a net and reel in the people who really love the work, who really want to approach it with expertise, but also love.
The therapists that I know all do therapy. I mean, and some have people that have mental illness, but they all do therapy. They don't do casework. And like I said, Irene pulled me in, 20 years ago, I guess it was almost 20 years ago, and had me helping her out. And that's how I got started in it. But there's not a lot of people that do that. There's just not. I don't know of any of my therapist friends, and we meet monthly, that goes out and does things like this. They don't like to do home visits. I mean, I think some of them do, but it's not something that generally therapists do, because you don't know what kind of home you're getting into. You have to be careful. You have to really know the family or really know that person. You don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not going in there with arms, just like I used to, law enforcement. You're going in there with a gun and a baton,
Mhm.
but you're going in there just on your own with your gift of gab.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it's inspirational to learn about someone like you with your sequence of experience and how it's all accumulated to bring you to this point and this level of service. It's really inspirational.
well, thank you. I obviously don't have all the answers. And some of the questions were kind of tripping me up, because I was thinking, well, what would I do? Well, what have I done? And all I can tell you is every case is so different, and every case is so unique. And, some people, it doesn't work when I go into this whole, thing about, "Oh, really? So you think that there's outer space? Well, do you wear the foil on your head and this and that?" And I'll just start talking to people, because that's what they relate to. If
Mhm.
I go in there and say, "That's not true," you're
Mhm.
just imagining that. It's an instant goodbye. But
Mhm.
if I can try to get into their world, and not every parent agrees with it, but if I can try to get into their world and get into something that they really like,
Mhm.
and I think that people with a mental illness know when your heart and soul's in it and when it's not. They
So
know.
true.
They can feel it. let me tell you this one last story. Do you have time?
Yes.
I'm working patrol. I'm a rookie, and I'm with my favorite training officer, Carlos Donia. He was just awesome. And we're on the east side in San Jose, and they said there's a woman screaming and playing her. It was a ghetto blaster, whatever you call those music things now that they don't have, right? But she's sitting in the laundromat and she's sitting on top of a washing machine. So he said, okay, Lisa, it's, you go in there and talk to her. So I went in there and I go, hi. And she had a big liter of soda and she's looking at me and the music's just full blast. And so she starts talking to me and I say, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. And she goes, oh, so she'd get her to turn it down. And I said, what are you doing? I go, you look like you're having fun. Is this a big party or what in here? So we got to talking and she comes off. I go, you know what? These washers and dryers are going, come on outside and talk to me. So she comes outside and she's just this really neat, obviously mentally ill young woman, and I'm talking to her. And Carlos says, because he's training me, he kind of comes up to me, he says, Lisa, you always face your gun side away from the person. He touches me, she goes off the deep end. Don't you touch her, leave her alone. And she just started screaming. I go, no, it's okay. I go, you don't have to protect me. He's just my training officer. He's trying to show me what to do. I got her to calm down. And I thought, oh my gosh, I felt so bad. And I go, no, it's okay.
Uh-oh.
Help them. They know when someone really has a big heart and is listening to them.
Mhm.
She's probably been abused by men. We were
Mhm.
talking about this later. When she saw Carlos's hands touch me and kind of turn me, she got scared and thought that he was going to do something to me, and I just, it was just touching to me. I couldn't believe that, and this poor lady was probably homeless or living in the nearby shelters. And I'll just never forget little incidents like that. I just thought, oh my gosh,
Well, you
here
keep
she is trying to
talking,
protect me.
you keep talking about getting into their world, and
Yeah.
that's a basic principle of rapport with
Yeah.
anybody. Um, and I'll bet it lines up, Barbara, with your work in what do you call that communication training that you're doing?
P-Reach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that fit with P-Reach communication?
That's totally what it's all about. It's just really without having an agenda, finding out what the person is thinking or afraid of or whatever, and just truly being present with them.
Mm-hmm.
And some people on this in this meeting might be familiar with the work of Russ Ellenhorn in Boston. Do you know him, Lisa?
I don't know him, but I'm writing his name down because I
You'll
like to
be
look these
really
people up.
happy if you look it up. He has, and all of
Okay.
us would be well served. I've mentioned this before. He is I think he's LMFT actually. He's not a psychiatrist, but he's developed quite a practice in community outreach treatment,
Mm-hmm.
people in the
Mhm.
community. And he has a lot of podcasts on his site. One of the things that he's been talking about lately is curiosity. To go into relationship with people with a sense of curiosity. And I thought, what an interesting way to say that. It sounds so respectful.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that you think that the guy that lives down below you has so many books, and the knowledge from those books has been floating up through the heat vents into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's interesting. Things like that.
Yeah.
Just the sense of approaching people with a sense of dignity, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's so out there.
Yeah.
It's
I had a client that says, I can compose music. And I said, okay, can you compose me a song? Because I really want to hear this song. And it was just a series of, I don't even know what, but I just thought, good for you that you even think that you can do this. Because I never thought I could compose a song. And we got to talking about it. And I couldn't really reach him like I wanted to. He'd show up for therapy real late, or he just but in the end, that was a good story. It just turned out. And I just always think, and I always talk about leverage. Your leverage is, for this person is you've got 2 kids that'll write this person a letter and say, I want you to get help. And that's the only person he's going to listen to. Or your leverage is, I'm not going to give you your allowance this week because you said you'd do this A, B, and C, and you didn't do it.
Mhm.
That takes, that's bravery to do that, because
Yeah.
some people get extremely irate.
Mhm.
And I always say, if you're going to go there, then you better have somebody else in the house with you, because that person may just lose control.
Mhm.
So you always want to look for leverage. So what's your leverage in this situation?
Well, it is 4:30. I do want to get some updates from the remaining people in the group, but I also want to say, Lesa, you really get us.
Oh,
You really understand what we're up against. And it is really so heartening to know that there is you out there
well,
doing
thank
the
you.
work that you're doing the way that you're doing it. And I do wish we could clone you. You've given us
Thank
a lot
you.
of hope to think that even there is this role that would be possible for us. Most of us have been for decades feeling we're not well served by public resources. We're just not getting the help we need.
Yeah.
And that's in the present time while we're here. But most of us are also really worried about when we're gone, which could
I
be
know.
anytime.
Right.
And we cannot leave our kids abandoned, and we've got to find somebody else who has some shred of expertise and love to take care of them, and patience and all of that. And so
Right.
thank you for being a great model for that and giving us that hope and that resource, and all of your your wisdom and experience and stories that encourage us so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you, honestly, for the new things you've taught me today, because I've learned a lot by just people disagreeing with me. And those things help me, because then I think, okay, maybe I need to do something different here. So I appreciate that. I really do, because I'm always learning. So.
Well, we're welcome to stay with us, but you probably have other things that
Well, I wanted to ask you and Barbara something after the meeting. So do you mind if I stay?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Let's hear from news from the field. Carolyn, would you be willing to report on the Invisible Population Project?
Well, prepared a lot for the San Mateo County NAMI presentation. And so our doctoral student had to take a couple weeks off just because she finished finals and she had kind of a heavy load. But this is really searching for data to support the need, initially here with our county, and maybe we can do this, in a bigger setting like the state or something, that, all these families, as we are here, are supporting their children, and many of them don't know what's going to happen to them, and they don't have a care plan. In fact, the professor has mentioned number of times that that might be an outgrowth of kind of what we're talking about today, is what do you need to have in a care plan. So yeah, parents are definitely scared. I just right,
if I could add, Carolyn is the tireless president of Solutions for Supportive Homes, which is a San Mateo County group that started a few years ago, where all of us were asking ourselves, where are our kids going to live and who's going to take care of them when we're gone? And we, it eventually became a nonprofit. We are working on, or Solutions for Supportive Homes is working on developing a supported living environment in Oakland, which is leveraging, if I can use that word, the community land trust strategy of financing. We did a program on community land trusts recently with the director of the Supported Housing Community Land Trust in Alameda County. What is your news? Any news?
Well, I don't have really much news. I guess I could just briefly review what I'm trying to do. We were considering having a bill, presenting some kind of document or some kind of bill to be passed, because our program,
that's right.
dwindling and poor leadership. So I don't know, let's see, there's nothing really new, since I last talked to you. I know that we we sort of wanted to have a situation where we could sort of pass a law that says if that there should be parents on the board, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I don't know how practical that is. So I haven't really done much homework, but we do have I think it was Linda Kaufman. She did a wonderful little blurb on what the possible language could be, but I just don't know how practical it is to make it that forceful in terms of requiring people on the board. I don't think that's really practical.
Mhm.
And so, but for families of the Elpida group, it's kind of essential. But in other words, they're not really interested in working on it unless it's all or nothing.
Mhm.
But when maybe there's a time when I have more time, I could pursue it because I still think it's important, and it could draw attention to an issue. So,
Mhm.
so.
And Barbara, you now have Linda Kaufman's name on your window, but that's okay.
I am really ready to just, I'm beside myself. This is the third power interruption this afternoon. And
Oh.
yeah, and I don't know, I just got tired of, I can change my name. But
Don't worry about it.
anyway,
Different
yeah, this
hairstyle,
is
though.
going to not be our normal video, unfortunately. And I even have power backup and it's not working. So I'm very frustrated right now.
On the cloud?
Oh, no, because I'm recording to my computer. So anyway,
I think it's a
sorry about,
miracle that we all get together and that this group started in the first place, and that you've been willing to handle these techie things. And I think we've all said it's better to do it imperfectly than not to do it at all. So
yes. Well, it will be imperfect, so we
Okay,
won't
well, we can
disappoint
celebrate.
anyone.
and celebrate the blessings of imperfection, I guess. Jean says, yay. Jean, do you have some news? No news? Carolyn.
Maybe I can ask Jean, because on Wednesday is your commission meeting when the Mental Health Services Act, the MHSA update for San Mateo County is being, I don't know if you call it presented, I'm not sure, but it's beginning their month for public comment in June. But I noticed that in the housing continuum, there was a statement that says that for MHSA housing units does not require the person to be homeless. So maybe Jean can explain that a little bit more, but I'm just thinking about all the messages that we have sent to this commission and to Doris Estremera specifically, that our kids need to be considered for the supportive housing because their parents are aging. And so maybe I'm feeling like, because I don't think that was written in before. Maybe.
So what the issue is that our kids don't have priority because they aren't currently on the street. And so the people who are on the street will always get put in ahead of our kids, even though clearly one day they won't be living with us because we won't be here. Right. So so that definitely needs some work. And the data the missing data, the invisible population data, is one of the things that in developing the game plan for public input and data collection for the 3-year plan, which is what is being opened for public comment on Wednesday at the commission meeting. That data, that missing data, was one of several things that we realize is missing, and whether there'll be the will to actually work on methods to have the data that we didn't have for decision making. We'll keep working on it. The 3 priorities from this 3-year plan are actually different than 3 years ago. I believe housing was number 1 3 years ago, and actually crisis response is number 1 this year. And I am not remembering, I'm sorry. Please go to the MHSA website and look at it. It's all there laid out. So what is being proposed, it's not written in stone. And so in this next 30 days of public comment, it can be changed. In fact, it can be changed in 30 days when before it's actually voted, but that would be less ideal to be changing it at the very end of public comment. So if you have significant things you want to say, hey, this is missing and this is really important, I would say, submit your public comment. You don't have to do it in 2 minutes at the meeting. You can write an email and really lay out what you think is missing, how you think that need should be filled, and yeah, the public comment heard the voices of almost 400 people, which is great. Probably 300 plus of those are in individual meetings, like we did with Solutions for Supportive Homes, where there was actually an interactive session where people provided their input and their priorities, and so putting it all together, 3 different priorities arose compared to 3 years ago, which doesn't mean other needs will not be attended to. We came up with 8 different need categories. Okay, so even if you're, I remember what the second one was now, is workforce development. So making the pipeline effective to get the people in our county in the pipeline to become the providers in the care system, so that they look like the people getting care, so that they are us. And so it has a lot of good ideas in terms of things like supportive work environments, so that you can work part-time and go to school, and tuition reimbursement and different things like that. So workforce development was actually the second one, and that's looking at racial equity and all sorts of things attached to the workforce. And I still can't remember the third one, but yeah, go on the MHSA website and take a look, and there's still time for your input.
Yeah, well, and this is another, I mentioned the housing elements, but this is also the other place where we really need to have this data to be able to express it to the county behavioral health, mental health system, that we've got these people out here. And I mean, we can begin, certainly the NAMI survey is a sample. I'm just feeling like it might be the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I don't know. So, but we really need to have, that's why we're not done yet. We're, still in process trying to find some other avenues that can provide that. Interestingly, Louise Rogers, Melinda, I found out, is interested in data.
Yeah.
So wonder.
So I'm wondering, Carolyn, if we have any information on the generation before us, who has passed, and what happened with their kids.
That would be a good, it may be that some of that may be in some of the literature review that Kristen has done. So it
would be, it would be really fascinating. Actually, I was thinking of it more from the point of view of what transitions were successful to maybe give us some guidance.
Well, and that's also part of the study. What transitions are successful so that you know, our kids will be able to deal with a case manager or you know.
Right, and what were the cases where they ended up just on the street? I mean, those are probably not documented, though it probably will be hard to get that information, but I don't even know, it's probably not that easy to get it, but it
No.
certainly would be interesting to know it.
I think we have anecdotal information from longtime NAMI moms who have passed and what's happened
Well,
with their kids. I'm thinking of a couple.
Many years ago, people were in institutions,
Hmm.
you know, in residential institutions, you know,
Mhm.
prior to being released to the communities.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I mean, that ended in
Really
the
exists.
80s, right?
Right, but I mean, I'm thinking way back, you know, people
Yeah,
were,
well, that's true. Yeah, but if you look at what's happened since the 80s, I mean, there's
know.
been a generation in there that's passed, or a lot of people have, and it would just be interesting to me.
I'm wondering, you know, when you have people on the street right now that are do have mental health issues, how many are because the families passed away, or because the families just couldn't deal with it anymore, or the person themselves rejected the family.
Hmm.
A lot of perhaps reasons why they're on the street. Yeah, there's a lot that can be studied.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up.